Join the nightly conversation. America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
All right, it is Thursday night, and every Thursday night we check in with Bill Cleveland. The segment is called, well, the website is called Bill on the Road. The website is BillOnTheRoad.com. Bill is on the road somewhere in America. Good morning, Bill Cleveland.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. How are you, McGraw?
Yes, good night, Bill Cleveland. How are you?
I'm good. Doing real well, man.
Good. Let's talk I Love Lucy because, it's I Love Lucy Day today somewhere?
It wouldn't surprise me if it was I Love Lucy Day somewhere, but, on this day in 1957, the very final episode of I Love Lucy aired on. You weren't alive in 1957?
No, I'm not that old. You do that at least every other week here. No. I did
think so.
But I did watch quite a bit of them, if not all of them, when I was a kid. And I loved I Love Lucy. They're still hilarious today.
They are. They really are. My dad was just telling me, because I mentioned this was going to be my topic on the air tonight, and he mentioned a couple of the famous episodes, like the one where she's stuffing the chocolates in her mouth. It's the conveyor belts going too fast. I mean, just a comedy genius. And she was from a town in New York called Jamestown, New York. And so I went there in search of as much Lucy stuff as I could possibly find. And I have to tell you, really the entire town still pays tribute to Lucille Ball. And it's very cool. They have a lot of, first off, the first thing you're going to see is, there's murals all over town. Some of these iconic scenes from her show, and just, great paintings on, old buildings throughout downtown Jamestown. The one thing people will absolutely want to go see if you're a fan of Lucille Ball, they have the Desi Museum, which is there in Jamestown. And inside the museum, it's so big they have two different buildings that house all this stuff. One of the buildings has an exact replication of the set from I Love Lucy. I mean, and it is right down to what you would have seen on television. And it's really neat to just kind of see that in person. If you've watched that show, you know what it's like. And really pretty much all done in one set, not too different than like, the Honeymooners or something, right? So you see that's pretty cool. Inside the museum, they have a lot of different artifacts, like different ball gowns that Lucille would have worn to different events. They have her Mercedes, for goodness sakes, in the museum, and then they also give some props, as they should, to her husband as well, part of that whole story. So it's a really cool place. Now, one of the things that people will know if they're talking about Lucille Ball in Jamestown, there has been controversy over the years about the Lucille Ball statue. I don't know if you know anything about this, but
I do not. I love a good controversy.
Oh yeah. So back in the day, I don't know the exact year that the original statue went up in Jamestown, but it was, and this does happen occasionally. Where they'll get the grant money and they hire an artist, and oh man, there's this big unveiling of a celebrity statue, a musician, actor, whatever, and then the curtain comes off and it's, oh my goodness, this looks nothing like the person that it's supposed to look like. So they called her there's two of them. They called her first statue Scary Lucy. And if you Google this and just Google Scary Lucy statue, and you will see this statue, and it is, with all due respect to the guy that did it, because, look at me, I can't make a statue, but I'm telling you, it is absolutely hideous. And it's there. So then they did a new statue. I think 2016, they unveiled another one, and it's really well done. They did a really good job. It's a great statue. Did you by chance Google it?
I did Google it, yeah. And no, okay. It does not look anything like Lucille Ball.
It is awful. It is if you Google one thing tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Google Scary Lucy statue, and you'll see the stat. Now, so I guess, I don't know if it was contractual or they didn't want to hurt the guy's feelings, whatever. They left the statue up. And so last time I was there, it was still up. But not right by the new statue. The new one is really well done. So you'll see that there in Jamestown as well. And then she lived there obviously and grew up there. Her homes where she lived, they're private residences, but you can drive by and see where she was born, and then see her childhood house appropriately on Lucy Lane, and then her gravesite is there as well. She was originally laid to rest in Los Angeles, I think at Forest Lawn, but her family wanted her back in Jamestown with some other family relatives and everything, and so she's there now. And it's actually really really cute because a lot of people go there to see it. And so there are hearts that are on the paved road that you can kind of follow, and it'll take you right to her gravesite, and you can't miss it. So yeah, Jamestown, New York, really cool place.
So it's upstate New York, just south of Buffalo a little bit. So you kind of have to want to go there.
Yeah, and there are other things to see and do there. It's a really beautiful area. Like within the county, they've got some really neat parks. I remember I did some great hiking. You're on the water there, so you can. There's a couple of really cool hotels where you can stay right on the water. It's really beautiful. I'll tell you another thing, McGraw, that's in Jamestown, and it has really nothing to do with Lucille Ball, other than I believe the reason that this museum is there is because of her. And here's what I'm talking about. It's called the National Comedy Center. Have you ever heard of this place?
No.
Okay, so the National Comedy Center, obviously, Lucille Ball, a pioneer in comedy. And so if I had to, occasionally I will do this, I'll think of like my favorite top 10 museums in the country, and this goes in my top 10. It
Really?
is so well done. I wanted to be totally cynical. I don't want to hate it, but I wasn't expecting very much. This place is awesome. If you love comedy and you appreciate comedy, everything from stand-up comedy to comedy in whatever, cartoons, films, television shows, late night programs, whatever. They've got a little bit of everything. My favorite part is right when you walk into the museum. As a lifelong huge fan of Johnny Carson and the Tonight Show, they have the original curtains from the Tonight Show when those curtains Johnny Carson walked out through over the years, they have them hanging in the museum, which to me was really cool. They've got Carson's Rolodex that he had on his desk. They've got that on display. Some of his costumes that he wore on the Tonight Show when he was doing some of his characters. If you remember the movie Anchorman, they've got Ron Burgundy's purple outfit, that he wore. They got the puffy shirt from Seinfeld. Remember Seinfeld? They had the puffy. I mean, it's so well done. It's really well done. All these George Carlin's daughter donated all of his archives to the museum, so like there's an entire corner of nothing but George Carlin. Like you see his notes and some of the things that he would have worn on stage. You would recognize it was George Carlin's outfit.
Right.
Just a really neat place, very neat place.
Interesting. And what's the museum called? The Museum of Comedy?
So it's called the National Comedy Center, and so I believe they do like a big event once a year. Don't quote me on that, or at least I think they used to. But it's huge, and there's interactive exhibits. So like one of the neat exhibits they had was they had television cameras, like actual studio cameras you'd see it, if you went to a taping of the Tonight Show or whatever. And so you stand behind the camera, and as you look through the lens, you can see the sets from different late night television shows. And as you move the camera from left to right, you're scanning the entire studio of, let's say, Late Night with Conan O'Brien or The Tonight Show with Jay Leno or whatever, and you kind of get this cool behind the scenes look at what these sets look like. They had the script from Toy Story that Don Rickles used, when he was the I can't remember what his character was, Mr. Potato Head. I think it was Mr. Potato Head. Just so many cool little artifacts, and all back dedicated to comedy, in the world of comedy.
Sounds like it's on a par with the Smithsonian Institute for TV. I mean, that's some rarefied. Awesome. I mean, if you got Seinfeld's puffy shirt, that's that's like the MASH tent that they brought into the Smithsonian. I mean, that's a rarefied air there. Yeah.
It is really cool.
looking at this Lucille Ball statue, the scary face. She's
tonight.
She's holding a Vita Vita Vegemin spoon with the bottle. If you notice,
yes.
Okay.
And it's funny you mentioned that they have inside the museum that one of the interactive things that you can do at the the Lucy Desi Museum. They have that set laid out, so you can get behind the set and pretend that you're Lucy going through that whole routine, and they've got cameras on you, and it's really fun. Again, especially if you are an I Love Lucy fan or you grew up watching Lucy, it's definitely worth a visit.
They always show that one with the conveyor belt. They show the one where she gets drunk on the Vita Vita Vegemin. There's an episode at the end where they go to L.A. I think they go to L.A. and then they move to Connecticut at the end. But she's in L.A. and she does an episode with Harpo Marx, I think. Is that the one that didn't talk? And she does this whole bit, and it is hilarious. It's fantastic. And then like John Wayne pops in and all these sort of cameos from all these people. It's really, really interesting. But we were talking about this before you came on the show. Did you know that Lucille Ball and the show I Love Lucy created the rerun, the idea of a rerun?
No, I didn't know. I do think, weren't they the ones that instituted like the first camera, 3 or 4 camera show?
Right.
Weren't they the ones that did that?
It was a 3 or 4 camera show, and then they were the first ones to do with a live studio audience. And Lucille Ball became pregnant, and she needed to rest and take off a couple of weeks. So Desi Arnaz got the idea, hey, why don't we just run a previous episode? And everyone thought it was the craziest idea, but they had no choice because she was recovering from having a baby. And when it aired, I think it garnered more views than the original, and the rerun was born.
Well, that's really interesting. I did not know that. I'm a sucker for good trivia questions, but the rest is history.
Yeah, and I also think because they owned the show, right? The whole Hollywood studio system, right? They own the show, Desilu Productions. They were the ones who started syndication. So, right, all of a sudden, these TV stations needed something, and they put on syndication, and they went and got the rights to I Love Lucy, and syndication started, and then a residual started, and that's all thanks to Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz.
Yeah, she was, not only, hilarious, funny comedian and a great actress. She, you're right. She was a smart businesswoman as well. And a lot of people have her to thank for their, like the cast of Friends or Seinfeld. Those checks keep rolling in every week. They can thank Lucy for that.
Yeah. But Jamestown, New York. That's it sounds like it's if you're ever up that way, it's not that close to Cooperstown, but not that far away either. I mean, you're in the state, you're in the upstate New York. So if you're thinking about making a little trip, it's east of Cleveland, south of Buffalo. So just kind of up there by Lake Erie. So there, Jamestown, New York, a small little town, produced Lucille Ball. How's the book tour going?
It's going real well. Got a couple events in the St. Louis area. For any of your listeners who are in the St. Louis area, got one coming up in the little town of Kirkwood, Missouri, I think on the 11th, and then in St. Charles, Missouri, the following day on the 12th. So if anybody's in either of those two towns, come on out. Would love to see you.
And then how's the children's book going?
Oh, it's going good. Yeah, I put a little video on my website today, or I guess on my Facebook page today for that. And it's cool. Like, who in the world would have thought that I would have written a children's book? Certainly none of my teachers. And so, it's kind of cool. But I got to tell you, McGraw, I do feel like now, like everybody's got a children's book. Like, I mean, do you have you probably have a children's book?
I do not have a children's book.
Oh, well, you will. You will.
I have a children's book. I have a children's book idea, but I haven't sold it yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Everybody's got a children's book now, so it's really not that special. Once Bill Cleveland has a children's book, then everybody. When I got a radio show, when I first got into radio, I was like, well, now everybody has a radio show. If I have a radio show, now everybody in the world has a radio show. All right, Bill Cleveland. Wow.
BillOnTheRoad.com, BillOnTheRoad.com. And your book, your presidential book, your presidential road trip book, and your children's book, all up on BillOnTheRoad.com. Bill, have yourself a good week. We'll check in with you next Thursday.
Okay, man. Have a good one. See you.
There you go. Bill Cleveland. That's how it works. Bill on the Road. BillOnTheRoad.com. Lucille Ball, one of the greats.